But there is a huge donor, as you know, Mr. Scaife.
He provides, it's been publicly reported. I don't like to disclose the names of our donors to protect them from retaliation, especially the larger ones.
Don't you have to legally, though?
In part, yes. The IRS, you report sometimes large donors, but that information generally is private. But it's been well publicized that Dick Scaife has supported us, and he's been generous, but it's only a small portion of our work. And so the 95, 97, 98% of our money comes from the small donor community.
But just to make sure, I saw a figure that from 1985, of course you weren't founded until, I don't know why it says 85, but to 2006, that the Carthage Foundation, was one of his, had given $4.4 million. Obviously they couldn't have given it to you, so whatever figure that was inaccurate, but it's in the millions though, isn't it?
It would be, yes.
But just take Richard Mellon Scaife and George Soros for a moment, just the two of them. Explain what you think both of them are trying to do. I mean, is it a way for them to get around the politicians themselves, to be influential?
Well, I've never met George Soros, but I've met Dick Scaife. And Dick Scaife is an intellectually curious person who likes learning about what's happening in our world. And he's curious, and he gets excited about good people doing activist work in Washington. And he's interested in learning and meeting all types. I know it's been well reported about how he struck up a cordial relationship with the Clintons, of all people. So Dick Scaife is a philanthropist, and a generous one, and who supports organizations, I think it's fair to say, that not only share his values, but you know, really help the country. And so a real great man and a great patriot.
Well, the figures on him, and I don't want to spend an hour on him. I mean, for instance, he's on one list that I'm looking at here. Over that same period of time, he gave $23 million to the Heritage Foundation.
Right.
And your friend Paul Wyrick's Free Congress Research and Education Foundation, $17 million, and the Judicial Watch, $8.3 million. So the figure that I gave actually was low. Are there enough of these organizations in town?
In terms of what?
Yeah, I mean, in other words, you're sitting there, you have to raise money all the time. Are you finding it, you're in competition with a lot of groups like Crew and others, or you get all the money you need?
Well, Crew appeals to a different market than we appeal. We appeal to a more to conservative Americans concerned about what our government is up to. And I think the pie is huge. And I always encourage conservatives to get out there and ask people for their support, because I think the more people we find to support the conservative cause, the better off we all are.
What's your biggest success?
Well, I think our most significant success in the Freedom of Information Act area is our fight with the Clinton administration over the trade missions. And we uncovered the fact that these trade missions, which were run out of the Commerce Department, where the government was bringing private businesses to foreign countries and advocating that the foreign governments there give them contracts, was being sold, frankly, out of the backseat of their car. You gave money to the Democratic Party or the Clinton Re-election Committee or election monies, you got a seat in these trade missions. And we uncovered, and the Clinton administration fought us tooth and nail on that. They shred documents. They uncovered, they lied to the court, and they withheld documents and just played all sorts of games. It led to, in part, the exposure of Chinagate, because in that Commerce Department was John Wang, who was a suspected Chinese agent who had not only raised money for Clinton in huge sums, but also went on to be appointed to the Commerce Department. And all sorts of other Chinagate-type figures. And as a result of our investigation, our FOIA litigation, which saw Commerce Secretary Mickey Cantor deposed, Terrence McAuliffe deposed, other top officials of the Commerce Department deposed, there was an FBI investigation, there were FEC investigations, there were congressional investigations, and the Commerce Department, even under the Clinton administration, was forced to reform the way they selected participants for these trade missions. And to this day, most recently, I was at a panel with a Bush appointee at the Commerce Department. This was last year. We're still known at the Commerce Department because we helped fix their trade mission policies in terms of making sure that people came on these trips for merit as opposed to who they were politically connected to. And of course, I'm a little bit suspicious of that anyway. I just don't think the government ought to be advocating for contracts like that. If Boeing needs help getting money from getting a contract from the Chinese government, let them do it themselves. We don't need tax dollars going to that. And it's because of that type of activity that companies see opportunities to game the system. And as long as you have the government doing things that probably ought not to do, you're going to have these temptations for corruption that we exposed. And the case lasted for 10 years, and we finally settled with the Commerce Department for $900,000 plus in legal fees. So it was a singular hallmark piece of FOIA litigation.
Go back to the settlement on this. They paid you $900,000?
Yes.
Plus your legal expenses?
No, that is to settle any claim we would have for legal expenses under the Freedom of Information Act. If you win a FOIA, to put not too fine a point on it, you can obtain legal expenses for your troubles from the government.
Explain FOIA. Melanie Sloan talked about this as a tool that they use also. How old is FOIA?
FOIA is about 40 years old, 40 plus. I think it was passed in 1967. And Judicial Watch's innovation in FOIA, it's the Freedom of Information Act, and you can ask for documents from government agencies, not from Congress. Congress passed it to behalf of the executive branch, but you can't FOIA Congress, and you can't FOIA the judiciary, but you can FOIA government agencies. You can't FOIA the White House directly, but you can FOIA the cabinet agencies, generally speaking. And if they have a certain amount of time to respond, 20 days or so, and it's been reformed recently, so it's even better in terms of openness. George Bush actually signed a reform of FOIA that made it better. If they don't respond, you have the ability to sue the agency in federal court, and that's a powerful tool that Judicial Watch innovated in making use of on behalf of the conservative cause. And in our case, our angle on the conservative cause was holding government accountable and honest and uncovering corruption. But FOIA has always been loved by the left. They use it whether to expose CIA activities or nefarious national security activities they don't like. But Judicial Watch came on the scene and said, whoa, I think the establishment said, whoa, this is not how we expected it to be used, and we've changed the landscape in that regard.
Ask you the same question I asked Ms. Sloan. Do any of your donors call you? You mentioned earlier that somebody said we ought to do something about this video and the conspiracy charges around 2011, but do they call you and say, let's go after somebody?
Well, you always hear back. You always hear back from your constituents or your donors or just people off the internet. You ought to look at A, B, or C, and we take that into account as we decide what to do. I mean, if a ton of donors are telling us, for instance, that they're concerned about Acorn, we're not going to ignore them. We're going to see what is out there on Acorn and see if there's anything that needs looking into. So I encourage our supporters to give me ideas for investigations. Like, we can't come up with all the good ideas ourselves, so I'm not shy about that.
Is there anything wrong with a big donor? Let's say if Dick Scaife calls you on the telephone and says, I've given you $8 million, I want you to do thus and so, that you do that?
Well, he's never done anything like that.
But what about his staff or his...
No. Our communications with Scaife and his staff and the foundation generally, he's just reporting what we're doing and detailing how their money is being effectively used. And that's true with all of our donors.
But is there anything wrong with them calling you up and asking you to do something?
If it's a good idea, there's nothing wrong with them suggesting a good idea. Why, a small donor could do that, and I would think nothing of it. Why would a big donor be frozen out of the good idea process that we're always trying to get more of? It seems to me if it's a good idea, it's a good idea no matter where it comes from.
Go back to your